So, expanding upon an idea that we had discussed yesterday, we went over the entire Alexis Lafreniere Montreal trade conversation, and we had spoken about the possibility of the Habs making a big move for this player and discussing whether or not it was actually a good idea. The idea of a slav-for-laugh swap just continues to befuddle me too. No way anybody thinks that is a legitimately beneficial swap that Habs fans could get on board with. But what I wanted to do was respond to one of the succeeding thoughts after this conversation was brought up on social media. Because one, Marco D'Amico went out there and responded to this Alexis Lafreniere Montreal Canadiens discourse, and he ended up giving a little bit of info that I wanted to dive into in this video. Kind of dive into why it could be the case, and dive into the history behind it. So, this is what Marco D'Amico said about the Lafreniere Bleacher Report Montreal Canadiens thing. To be clear, these Lafreniere to Montreal trade rumors came from a speculation piece from Bleacher Report. No inside intel was brought in, it was purely hypothetical. I'm seeing outlets pick this up as a report right now, so I thought I'd clarify. D'Amico then responds saying, hey, it went from the speculative text above on Bleacher Report saying that there would be a fit between Lafreniere and the Habs to Athlon Sports' piece saying an NHL writer predicts Lafreniere to the Canadiens. It also led to reports suggest, quote-unquote. As you can see, this is simply a suggestion that took a life of its own. There is no truth to it. And D'Amico links a Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro article where they talk about how the Canadiens are eyeing, reportedly, Alexis Lafreniere in a trade. So D'Amico did try to calm things down and spill some fire on the idea that this is actually a thing, or the Canadiens do want him. It was all speculation, folks. But the reason I'm making this video to respond to that Lafreniere discourse is because of what D'Amico said after the fact. Because he quote-tweeted his own thread, and also said this: I'd just like to add that not only are the Canadiens and Rangers terrible trade partners, but the two sides aren't exactly fond of each other. There's still some bad juju over how things went down in New York during the last regime change. Now, Marco D'Amico is not some bum who doesn't have any insider information. He interviews folks in the business, he has sources, and this is something that I think isn't really too surprising when you sit down and really ponder why it might be the case. To hear that the Montreal Canadiens and New York Rangers would not be good trade partners because they kind of don't like each other, based off of the last regime change, does kind of illuminate the mindset of maybe not necessarily the Canadiens, but potentially Jeff Gorton himself. Might I remind you, Jeff Gorton was dismissed as the New York Rangers GM back in 2021, and it was kind of a sudden thing. He was taken out. John Davidson was also kicked out too. Chris Drury named the president and GM in that time frame. And just reviewing some Rangers fans and opinions from back 4 years ago when that transaction was made, there were a number of folks going out there and saying, like, okay, it's kind of weird that Jeff Gorton is getting kicked out of this spot when the coaching staff stays the same. David Quinn stuck around a little bit longer than John Davidson and Jeff Gorton. And if you're in a spot where you are building this team, you're making these acquisitions, you're making these trades, and the players are just not fitting the style that the coaching staff has, they're not performing to the standard that you probably would expect based off of the caliber of guys you have, there's a reasonable idea that says, yeah, maybe Jeff Gorton is a little bit ticked off with how things ended, and maybe there is some bad blood there that is carried over into the Canadiens organization. Then it would make sense if Gorton, the president of the Habs, does not want to allow his team to help out or make any transactions with the team that employed him before. Around this time, 4 years ago, the New York Rangers issued a statement about a very bad hit that Tom Wilson had, and that was a horrible act of violence that was posted and talked about on Artemi Panarin, and there was sort of a attitude from this statement that a lot of folks were going out there and sensing from the words themselves. And I remember some people asking about this, like, hey, is there a world where Jeff Gorton and John Davidson may not have been too on board with making a statement like this? Whining essentially about how Tom Wilson hit a guy and it was not given the proper discipline. If that's the case, then is that part of the reason why? I mean, that's just a very speculative idea, but hey, it's been 4 years. We can kind of take our picks as to what may have happened here, and if it actually played a part. Statements like these usually are not made, and they're certainly not usually made by the GMs of whichever teams are making them. So you could debate that, yeah, maybe this was just the owner straight up deciding to make a post on MSG Sports and shock the hockey world with a public calling out of the NHL's Department of Player Safety, literally putting in the statement that they failed to take the appropriate action and suspend the guy. There was a lot of reason to think about that in the context of Jeff Gorton getting the can, but you also have to think about some of the other things too. People would frequently bring up the young core that Gorton had brought into the Rangers organization, but there also were a number of guys that didn't do all too well in that same stint. You had the Vitaly Kravtsovs of the world, the Elias Andersons, and other guys that were rotating around there in Rangers draft purgatory. It just didn't work for some of these guys, although a lot of the other guys, especially towards the second half of his tenure, were reasonably good. Alexis Lafreniere was a rookie when Jeff Gorton got the can. And I get it, it's easy to say, yeah, you just draft a first overall projected guy first overall. That's not necessarily him making the choice there, but it still is something to work with. So for Jeff Gorton to have assembled a team that a lot of people were intrigued to see grow and develop and talk about what they could do in the next few years, to see him get the can so prematurely for Drury to come in instead, I can understand if there is some bad blood there. Chris Drury was already speculated to being a guy that was hovering around the Rangers bubble in that time frame 4 years ago. He was a younger executive, he didn't have the experience like some of the other vets had, and he fully was brought in to take over Jeff Gorton's role, and because it was kind of unexpected, I could understand if Gorton's a little bit ticked off about how that went down, and as a result, maybe puts the Canadiens in a spot today to not really entertain any offers with New York. So with that in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this bad blood that seems to exist between these two franchises. Maybe it's one way, maybe the Rangers don't really care too much, maybe they're looking at the Montreal Canadiens and Jeff Gorton and saying, yeah, so what, you're the guy that used to be employed by us. That doesn't matter, like, we're okay with making a trade with you. But if the Canadiens' perspective is more tainted, and if Jeff Gorton's influence is that strong, which it does seem to be, like he's a very important figure in the Canadiens organization, if there are some personal feelings that could get in the way here, I did want to go out there and just kind of talk about that in the video so we can get some conversations going in the comments section. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think this is a valid reason to have some bad juju or some bad blood over a team that employed you 4 years ago? Do you think there is any stock to what D'Amico was talking about here? Do you think there actually is any bad blood? If you disagree, you can let me know in the comment section all your opinions, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.